Hi folks, I'm Sheila and welcome to Counsellor Convos. Let's get stuck in. Hello there folks, welcome to another episode of Counsellor Convos. So then folks, on the run up to my suicide prevention event on Tuesday the 16th of April, I am joined by the lovely James Fennelly. And as always, James, if you're happy to introduce yourself to the listeners in any way that you're comfortable to do so.
Well, I won't sing a song, Sheila, because I don't have a good voice like you. But hello, everyone. My name is James Fennelly. I'm the coordinator for West Clare Mental Health Association.
Fantastic stuff, James. For any listeners that don't know about the West Clare Mental Health Association, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, West Clare Mental Health Association. We're based in Kilroy, in West Clare, just below Loop Head. And the association was established in 1975 by
Okay.
a group of local volunteers. And the aim of the association is to promote positive mental health, well-being, and recovery in all the communities we can reach in West Clare. So we've
Yeah.
a fairly active committee, and we run peer support meetings, music clubs, and woodland for well-being walks on a weekly basis. And then during the year, we provide education and training workshops up and down the coast as well to people.
That
And that's kind
sounds
of us.
fantastic. You know, what a great combination of stuff do you do there, James. And the fact that it was set up in 1975, that's ahead of its time.
It certainly is now. It's so it'll be 50 years young next year, like
Wow.
nearly as young as myself, you know. But
Well, I think
yeah, there are.
I could say almost snapping that. I'm heading towards the 50th mark myself, James, you know. But I like
Oh,
how you said 50 years young.
yeah, 50
Brilliant.
years young next year, and yeah, and I suppose I came on board about 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
we've tried to bring the association into the mainstream and use it as a vehicle to break down the stigma that's around mental health and well-being. Because there
Mm,
is a lot of stigma in Clare and West Clare and Ireland, and it's a societal thing. And so the more we're out there, the more we're in people's faces, but not that much in their faces. You know, the more that we're relevant and that
yeah.
we've advertising and leaflets and stuff like that, that helps with trying to break down the stigma that's around. That's a barrier for people accessing supports and services.
Yeah, it absolutely is, James. That old stigma, you know, that certainly at the suicide prevention event, that I'll be addressing that again like I did last year. Why do you think, James, that there's a stigma, like especially around County Clare, which is, I suppose, our focus really, as part of this episode. But in your own experience, what you've come across, why do you think?
I think it's it's the male factor, the male gene, or whatever you call it, trying to
Yeah.
be hard, trying to be tough, not showing weaknesses, uh, and I suppose not paying attention to their emotions and not comfortable. Women kind of, generally speaking, all the events we go to, we would have 3 to 4 times the number of women attend events than men, and yet suicide figures for West Clare would be, 3 men to 1 woman. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's an embarrassment and there's a stigma, and they don't want to be seen, and they're for fear of ridicule of their peers, maybe won't they don't step forward.
James, I think that's a really valid point actually for fear of ridicule. That kind of like that if they do talk out, that some of their peers might say, ah, will you stop it? Sure, what's wrong with you? Sure, you're only making that up and play down, as you say, ridicule the person. And actually a lot of times when somebody ridicules a person, they're trying to it's a defense mechanism because they themselves are uncomfortable with it. So it's
Yeah.
actually more about the other person who's doing the ridiculing than the actual person who's struggling. I must say that on my computer, I have this sound that comes up. It's like a whoop. And I've no idea where it comes from. So, listeners, if you hear an annoying sound, I haven't figured out what it is. So, I apologize for that. But we'll crack on. Okay, folks, we'll crack on. Yeah, and then this thing you say, like a sign of weakness. Do you know something, James? Like, I've come to the conclusion that, most of us, we put on the mask. Most of us can pretend we're happy when we're not. I
Yes.
actually think that it's the opposite to weakness. I think that it actually takes great strength to be comfortable with your vulnerability or to even take that first step in showing your vulnerability.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, I think when someone reaches out for some help or support, that's never a sign of weakness. That's a sign that they've been strong for so long
Yeah,
and strong themselves. And now, yeah, it's a huge thing when people reach out because you know the age-old saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So people have to make that step. And
yeah,
whether it's with mental health or whether it's with addiction, you can't force anything onto anyone. They have to come to that realization that they want to change or they're not happy with the way things are, so they want a bit of help. And that's certainly not a sign of weakness, in my opinion, anyway. It takes
yeah.
huge courage, huge strength, and oftentimes it's a huge relief for people when they take that. The
Mm.
pressure's then off them. They understand, especially in our peer support groups, when they understand they're surrounded by people who've the same or similar shared life experiences, that it's a safe place to talk about their emotions, their feelings, and their well-being.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, James? Do you find that when people do open up and talk, that they realize that there's so many other people that have the same thoughts?
We've I've done this. I don't know if you've heard of the rap course, Sheila. We've done
Yeah,
it a few times, and during rap, you'll often see it come out when people start to share their
yeah,
experiences. How how similar we all are
yeah,
in our family groups and family units. No one owns the book on I suppose uniqueness. We're all very similar. We've all
yeah.
similar experience, and especially in Ireland, going back through the years, and it's very it's very touching to hear the people share their stories, and then for other people, the reaction is, "I thought it was just me. I thought it
Yeah.
was just me and my family." And say, no, these things are more common than people realize, but the stigma kind of keeps it that little bit buried down.
Yeah, do you know what, James? I think it isn't just a stigma. I think it's generational behavior. As
Yeah.
part of my talk, I will be giving an educational talk on generational behaviours and the effects on people's mental health. And when you look back in the different themes of different generations, don't air your dirty laundry in public, don't speak out, don't be making a scene. Things kind of get shoved under the carpet, and it's that silence, it's that silence that suffocates people actually, because when they don't speak out, they feel very isolated and they feel like they're the only one. But when you actually start to speak out, as you say, James, we're all similar. We're so similar and we're all a bit messed up. It's the people that think they're normal. They're the ones I worry about, because
Yeah,
I'm convinced none of us are. I wouldn't want to be.
we're all human beings. That's why we're all so similar. And it just, some people, have probably inflated egos or airs or graces. But at the end of the day, they're not really made up of anything different to us,
Yeah,
and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and everyone will have their insecurities. But it's the people who are prepared to talk about it and talk open and honestly about it. That in itself can be of great benefit to them, and it can be a big release for people just to be able to get it off their shoulders.
absolutely, James, because like all this pretending to be strong, well, it's the opposite. It's just a mask. It's not strength. It's just putting on a mask, and being able
Absolutely.
to allow yourself to admit, yeah, that sometimes you're not okay because we're not okay all the time. We can't be. We're human beings. And it's just interesting when you mentioned about the ego as well, James. Do you know But like, I have this thing where I think one of the things that Irish people worry about is what would the neighbours think? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and it's that ego, isn't it? Like I remember putting that to the test because I used to be so worried, like as a stand-up comedian, I used to be so worried that people would judge me and stuff like that. And I decided to challenge my own anxious thoughts. And I remember before a gig, I actually sat in the audience, so they didn't know who I was. And I sat in the audience to see what they were saying about me. And the thing is, James, were they talking about me? No. Did they even mention my name? No. I had to get over myself. And there's a real lesson to learn that where we can actually look at our own behaviours and realise that most people don't give a beep about you because they're too busy thinking about themselves.
I heard a good one before. It was along the lines of what someone else thinks about you is none of your business.
Ah,
That's their business. It's not your business.
no, James, that is Susan Jeffers' quote that you've just quoted there.
Yeah,
Susan Jeffers wrote the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she came up with that absolutely brilliant quote of what other people think of you is none of your business. And do you know something, James, even to add to that? So sometimes when I have clients, and sometimes when their belief about themselves is a distorted view of themselves, that they think they're rubbish, they think they're no good, they discount their capabilities. I swap that saying around and I say to them, what you think of yourself is none of your business.
yeah, no, sure. But look, everyone is too busy in their own lives to give you or give me. Or we were doing a talk last night in Middletown, Malby, and I was
Yeah.
kind of saying to myself, if something happened during the talk, if you sneezed or coughed or spluttered or worse, farted or something in public,
I can't smell it. We're online. You're all right.
but do you know what I mean? They might get a giggle or you might be embarrassed about it, but people forget about it within a minute or two and they
Yeah.
move on to and we're all the same like that. We all need to understand that it's what the neighbours think about us. The neighbours have their own things going on that they might mention you for a minute or two, but they move on to anything else then. No
Yeah.
one spends their whole life dissecting
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, they do. I really do think, I know this is quite straight talking, but I believe people need to get over themselves. Because I
Really
had to
do.
learn that about myself first, that, but it's interesting actually, James, when you talk about kind of people and in general, because I suppose you do have a bit of the old gossip and a bit of the old, kind of somebody being the next story. I suppose people are afraid that they do something wrong or that they're caught out in the spotlight. I often come across this that people play themselves down, almost like that they don't want to be seen in case they get something wrong. And
Yeah.
what that reminds me of, James, is that you have individuals like that do actually come out with their mental health and they do talk openly about their mental health. And what I did find in some of the feedback with that is that sometimes like it is incredibly brave to talk about your mental health, to talk about anxiety, depression, all of that. It's even more brave to talk about it in a public platform. Like it's incredibly powerful because that's how we kind of get inspired. That encourages other people to do the same. What I have found is that some of the negative feedback can be that when somebody comes out and they might talk about depression and anxiety, is that they still struggle with depression and anxiety. I still get episodes of depression. So it's kind of like that if I'm out in public, I might have loads of people that want to chat to me, but I might not be in a good place. Now, luckily, I've gotten over the fact of caring what other people think. So if somebody comes up to me and I'm not in a good place and they want to ask me all about my depression, I'm like, look, sorry about that now. I appreciate you asking. I'm just not in the mood for talking, but thanks for asking. Now that's happened, and they've gotten really offended by me not wanting to be how they want me to be in that moment. But again, it's the stuff that we learn, James, that we have to have kind of self boundaries, and especially myself and other people who struggle with their mental health from time to time, that the general public mean well and they want to ask about it. But I think it's an important message for people listening to this, that when they do hear people talking openly about their mental health in on a platform like this, it doesn't mean that they're okay to talk about it every day. Does that make sense, James? I hope I'm making sense.
Oh, look, it absolutely makes sense. As I say, when you put yourself out there and then you become recognized for it, and then people want to, or just bump into you during the day. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's easy for them to forget that, it's okay not to be okay every day. And, on them days, it is a balancing act, and when you don't want to, offend anyone, but at the same time, being able to say no is a huge strength and say,
yes,
look, I'm not actually feeling the best today, and then maybe to try and find a win-win and say, look, you have my number, send me a message or something, or contact me later on, and I might have a chat with you. But again, look, that's just people get. I suppose it's probably like being kind of paparazzi and kind of things
yeah,
like that, where they go after people. It's just sometimes it's not that it's inappropriate. It's just you can't help how you feel on any given day, and
yeah.
if you're having a bout of depression or anxiety, but you're still getting on with your day to day stuff, that little bit of space. So, but yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's
Yeah.
a challenge as well for people when you become known. But you don't know when you wake up tomorrow what the landscape is going to look like for you.
No, you
So
absolutely don't, from day to day, especially when you're really going through it, that you don't. It can change from day to day. And it's just people being a bit mindful of that and a bit kind of respectful of that. And that is such an important point that you said about it. There is such power in being able to say no. James, you're absolutely spot on with that. It's almost a skill to learn how to say no. Because I think as Irish people, we're naturally born people pleasers. We want to please everybody. We want to say yes to everybody all the time. What do you think, James?
oh yeah, it's a skill and it's a discipline
Yeah,
that people have to be able to say, no, I'm not comfortable with this, or no, I don't want to do this, or no, I'm not in a good space now at the minute. So it's a skill, but yeah, it comes easy. It's often easier just to say not and keep stum and smile and put on the mask. But
yeah,
you know, I said that doesn't serve anyone any good either. But it's a learning for people that come up and talk to you in the street if they recognise that, yeah, it's not a better. Everything isn't a bed of roses, and it's just to be mindful. Maybe if they lead into it, how are you today? Can you give me? Would you be up for a chat for 2 or 3 minutes, or have you, are you in a
yeah,
good enough space to do that? Maybe, but
yeah.
it's to be mindful of it. But then, no different to anyone else. When you say hello to a friend or neighbor or colleague or something, they may not be in a good space.
Do you know what? It really highlights what you're saying, the difference between to ask, not assume. That might be helpful for the listeners, like, because it can be, life changing when somebody listens to somebody talk openly about their mental health. They might have heard that for the first time. They might be
Yeah.
desperate to talk to that person. So I suppose it is to ask the person, first of all, are you okay if we have a chat, or could we have a chat at another time? It's ask, don't assume. That hopefully that might be helpful. James, I'm going to ask something to you now, and feel free to say no. Hey, we'll test your skills. Um, so, James, what I want to ask you is, have you ever experienced depression or anxiety? And please feel free to say no. Go away, Sheila, if you don't want to talk about it.
I suppose I've never had a diagnosis.
Yeah,
My wife would be has the diagnosis of clinically severely depressed, but I
yeah,
would recognize, and she will be on. antidepressant medication for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
She firmly believes she needs it, and she firmly believes it makes a difference. But I would recognize traits in
Yeah.
her well-being that I would have in my well-being.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would sometimes I would be fatigued for no reason, and that would be a common trait with my wife. Her energy levels can just disappear,
Yeah.
and I would see that myself. So I would be conscious of maybe my mood. While I wouldn't be necessarily feeling low, I think it would be a byproduct of maybe being low and not being in that space that my energy levels would drop.
Yeah.
Anxiety, I think I've lived with anxiety all my life.
Wow, that's very honest.
You
What
know,
makes you say that, James?
I think I've had it. I've had these kind of irrational thoughts when I was young, growing up. If my parents were working or away for the evening, that something terrible might happen before they got home, and just
Okay.
these you get gripped in these irrational
Yeah.
thoughts, and obviously they always came home. And but I think anxiety can vary from person to person.
Mm,
Uh, it's never paralyzed me, but it's something that probably it ruminates in me, or I procrastinate a lot,
yeah.
and oh, why didn't I say that? Or I might go over certain instances and say, I wish I said this, or if I come across that again, I'm going to say this the next time.
Mm,
And they're completely made up events in your mind. So I would think that's the anxiety coming through. I think we'd all have a level of anxiety,
yeah.
and we'd all have a level of, say, depression. Obviously, look, like your physical health, you can have good physical health, and you can have something life threatening. So it depends where you sit in it. But
Mm,
I would say definitely that when the clocks go backwards, fall back in October, when the evenings get shorter, it definitely affects my mood. Definitely affects it.
yeah. Isn't that interesting, James? That makes me think of SAD, seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I bought a light box last
Hmm.
year, and then I started supplementing with vitamin D to see. And I think that made a big difference this year to my energy levels. And now we've only another 8 days to go before the clocks go forward
Woohoo!
again, and we're back in the bright evenings. But yeah, and I would know a lot of people who'd certainly be affected by the changing of the clocks in winter to the winter hours as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Thank you
But
for
I
sharing
mean,
all of that, James.
like depression, I'd never, I suppose, feel sad. So depression for me isn't feeling sad. Depression for me would definitely
Mm,
be a lack of energy.
yeah.
Some mornings to find the excuse to get out of bed when you don't
Mm.
have to get out, when you don't have to do work. I think routine is hugely important
Oh,
to
yeah.
combat depression.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a job to get up to in the morning, or if you don't have school or college to get up to, you have to find another routine to get up for, whether it's to get up and go for your daily walk, or go and
Yes.
get the newspaper in the shop, or check in on a neighbor. You have to find that reason or that excuse to get up, because
Yeah.
you're simply, if you've had 8 hours sleep or 7 hours sleep, you, the tiredness you're feeling is not. Your body isn't that tired, but if you just to get your feet out of the bed some morning, that could be like climbing Mount Everest. I'm a devil for putting the alarm on snooze for 10 minutes. Devil for, but yet, and I find strangely enough, if because of my working schedule, I don't necessarily have to be up in the mornings, but we have commitments.
Yeah.
But if we have an appointment or something early in the morning that we need to be up at 6 o'clock to be on the road for somewhere,
Mm,
that's never a problem. It's
mm,
never a problem when when there's something really important on. The
yeah.
problem is when you don't have something to get up to in the morning, you have to get into a space to fool yourself to get up, or find a reason to get up.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, it's so interesting all the stuff you've been saying, that routine again so important. And I suppose it's that everybody's different, James. It's like I'm exactly the same to routine. Whereas when I have a day where I don't have anything planned, I'm very happy to stay in bed and not have anything to get up. I'm like, it's okay not to be okay,
Yeah.
That,
My
yeah.
my my mother was a terror when I was in the early 20s, and I'd have a weekend off, and let's say I might be feeling a bit worse for the wear on the
Yeah.
Saturday morning of my weekend. I wouldn't have been off most weekends. I would have been working.
Wow.
But the Saturday or Sunday morning after the night before, my mother'd be in the room trying to hunt me out of bed, saying, "You can't stay in bed till 11 or 12." Now, I might have been only in bed since 5 or 6, but she'd still insist you had to get up and get on with the day, like even, and you really wouldn't be well enough to get up, like. But yeah, I would think I would be conscious when if I wake up in the morning
Yeah.
and I don't want to get up out of bed and say maybe my mood wouldn't be the best. So I'd be looking
Mm.
into my wellness toolbox and say, well, what am I not doing that I usually do when I'm in a good place? So
Ah,
maybe I'm
that's a
not looking
great
at
question.
maybe I'm not concentrating too much on what I'm fueling the body with, or maybe I'm not getting the daily steps in. I
Mm.
think they're important. What you're eating on a daily basis and what little bit of exercise you're doing. And I think you find that if you look when you reflect on when you're doing well, these things are important and they matter to you. And when you're not feeling the best, I think they take a back seat to everything else, and but they are very useful to you.
You're spot on with that, James. I have that when I have returnees back to counselling, and we look back and kind of what was going on in their timeline. And often the stuff, it's like you're almost fooled that they're doing well. They think, oh, well, I don't need to do all that stuff. I'm fine now.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's all that stuff that keeps them fine. You stop doing the stuff, do you start getting unfine? I don't
yes.
think that's a word. Yeah, I'm using it. Do you know what you say about
No,
the
for sure.
anxiety? You know me,
It's
James. I
easy.
love the humour, and it reminded me of a saying that I heard that anxiety makes you think of worst case scenarios. And I tell you something, I've been through some terrible things in my world, and some of them actually happened. Because it is, we go
Yeah.
to worst case scenario, don't we? Okay, on a more serious note, so let's have a small bit of time talking about the issue of suicide in County Clare. I hope you don't mind me mentioning, we can edit this out if you do, about you working as a Coast Guard, James. Are you okay with me mentioning that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you see some horrific scenes working as a Coast Guard, and I know we spoke about this briefly when we met face to face. With thanks to the last suicide prevention talk with the kind people, paying to come in and money going towards your association and the Haven Hub. Yeah, that look, I've got all my reasons as to why people get to the point of suicide and take their own lives. What's your thoughts on that in the work that you do?
I think, look, and I suppose it's hard to, in my experience and talking to people and families, afterwards, that, I think sometimes the medication isn't working for people, and the medication causes them more pain,
Yeah,
if that makes
yeah,
sense. And
yeah, that can
yeah,
happen.
that can happen. And I suppose an interesting one, I spoke to a guy recently. Sometimes, I think a lot of the times people they're at their wits' end, they can't see a way out, they're in huge amount of pain.
Yeah,
I think other people, they're not necessarily in pain, but and they see an opportunity and it just crops up and they decide to take it.
yeah,
And I remember one person talking to me one day and he said, I just thought for a split second, if I just moved this way now, I'd be under the wheels of the truck.
yeah.
And he says he didn't know where the thought came from, but
Mm,
it just came into his head.
yeah,
So look, I suppose I don't think I think every instance is unique.
yeah,
It's unique to the person, but I would think in no difference, I suppose, sense that, and this is from the stigma side of things, if someone dies of cancer,
hmm,
then they lost the drugs didn't do the job. The drugs
yeah,
didn't help them. And I think that can be the same with depression and
yeah. It's a
things like
fair
that. That
point.
sometimes the drugs don't win.
Well,
They
actually,
don't really
like the
think.
doctors will actually say this, and I say this to clients as well, is that when they do, if they do decide to take medication, which sometimes it is needed, that it does come with a warning that for the first couple of weeks you're more at risk of actually taking your life by taking antidepressants. I mean, there's a weird irony in that, but actually the reason for that is because sometimes people are so knackered and they're so burnt out they don't have the energy to kill themselves. And what
Okay.
can happen is that when they start on the antidepressants, whichever one they're trying out, that sometimes they get a bit of energy back and they're still suicidal. So then they're in the danger zone at that point. And it's a really important piece of information that families need to know this. That, oh, grant on the medication are fine. No, that is the danger time actually, the 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then it is a case sometimes the medication doesn't suit and they continue to feel worse. You kind of have to give the
Yeah.
medication a bit of time to see which one works for you. So it is a trial and error at a very vulnerable time. So safety always comes into that. Um, on another note, then James, like it makes me wonder, in your experience, will say with the people that you meet, especially when they are suicidal themselves, or people come to the group, because I often find it with clients and stuff that they appear absolutely fine, and then half an hour into the session, they're telling me that they want to end their life, which is really
Mhm.
important that they're telling me that because I know I can manage that, I can handle that, I can give them the space that they need. What have you found that has been helpful for people who have been suicidal?
Uh, I think the biggest thing is to be a good listener and not to judge and just to sit with them. And
Yeah,
and I suppose we talk about seeing the invitations and then to ask the question. And if you have the if you go with your gut instinct, I would always say that as well. And if someone is sending out signals that they're completely disinterested, you can ask the question without insulting them. And if
yeah,
they're in that space, then to sit with them and keep them safe. But I would think the biggest skill is just to be a listener,
oh yeah, yeah,
and non-judgmental, whatever's going on. I certainly don't be offering them advice to, it'll be fine tomorrow, things like that. Don't, you're just trying to keep them safe, but to listen. And a lot of times, by the very nature that they start talking to you, I think you're on a good footing with them. And the outcomes are certainly more positive. Because I would hear a lot, Sheila, at the funerals, and it would be, the life and soul of the party, the clown
yeah,
joker. We never knew there was anything wrong
yeah.
because they didn't read the signals or the person never told anyone they're not in a good place. And that's a commonality between colleagues I've lost to suicide, and recoveries we've been involved in that all, and especially with men, life and soul of the party, clown
Yeah,
joker, never knew there was anything wrong, couldn't believe there was anything wrong, going on with this person because they're always happy. And as you say, that's the
it's
mask
the
just never came down.
something, James, doesn't it really highlight? I remember talking about this at one of my theatre shows, and I was highlighting a point that where a friend of mine had said about a relation. Same story, what you're saying, James, with life and so the party and stuff like that. And she kept saying, why didn't he say something? Why didn't he say something? And I said to her, I said, I hope you don't mind me asking this. I mean this from good intentions. I said, you're saying, why didn't he say anything? Okay. When you think of his family, the people around him, were they the sort of people that they talk openly about their feelings, that they would welcome him saying, I'm not doing well, or I'm suicidal? She said, oh God, no, 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 no. They don't talk about their feelings at all. So that then highlights there's a much bigger issue at play. That,
There
you
is.
know, when you look at the families, because there's so much, even over here, they've lots of campaigns, Britain Get Talking and stuff like that. But actually, there's the other side of it. It's other people get listening. And but not just that, it's about a cultural change of again being able to be okay with not being okay. Because while we get into this kind of whole notion of we're happy all the time. We're more or less saying, but we don't want to be sad. We don't want sadness. We don't want to hear about sadness. We're actually effectively part of the problem with those cultural behaviors. So now if I'm not okay and somebody goes, how are you doing? I go, I'm not really okay. But then I say, but I'm okay with not being okay. And
Yeah.
so effectively, I'm saying to them, I'm not in a good place, but I don't need you to fix me. I'm okay being in this place. That's very powerful. That's taken practice, James, I can tell you. And when you were saying about the life and soul of the party, like myself, my background in stand-up comedy, like it would have been 2015 when I first came out publicly, basically saying that I had depression for decades. And one of the reasons why I came out publicly, talking about it was I was that number. I was that example of you would never, ever have thought that I, behind the scenes, had crippling depression, anxiety, and panic attacks and all of that. But I tell you something, by me coming out, as I like to call it, and I mean, it's pretty risky here, James, because, as a qualified counselor, psychotherapist, I had that fear. People go, geez, well, we're not going to go to her. So she's mental, like, she hasn't sorted her mental problems at all. But the opposite has happened, actually, from both professionally and personally. So by me actually using my voice and deciding this is me, I've got depression and it doesn't define who I am. The irony of it, James, was that I hardly now get episodes of depression at all. So the more I've gone on to do this work and accept it and not let it define me and just kind of learn how to work with it, it's hardly around because it doesn't need to be. I think there's a misconception about depression and anxiety. It's around because it's trying to tell you something. Often there's something not right in that person's lives. And in my own private practice, we work through that about working with anxiety, working with depression. Often depression is somebody's knackered, they're burnt out. The depression keeps them in bed because they're knackered.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's getting that message across that it is okay to come out. And if other people have a problem with that, it really is their problem because this is a cultural change that's needed, not just about the individuals asking for help. Yes, there's that, but we have to look at why don't they ask for help?
We do, and I think one of the things that has to be looking at, there needs to be a rebranding. We need to lose the mental in mental well-being.
Yeah,
We need to get rid of it. It's too negative.
yeah,
It brings back ideas of, institutions or, these big
yeah,
sanatoriums in
yeah,
America, and he's mental, he's mad.
yeah.
We need to take that out of it because the connotations are there, the negative connotations. So, I'd like to see at some stage someone to have the courage to say, we're just going to talk about well-being, whether it's your physical well-being or your mind well-being or whatever
It's so
whatever we
hard.
want
You
to.
wanted to say your mental well-being, didn't you? It's
Yeah,
so hard, James, isn't it? We're
it's
so used to
difficult, but
saying
I
it.
think maybe if we talk about your physical health or just your well-being,
Yeah,
and we need to focus on that to break down the stigma, to encourage people to to open up and let everyone and to open up and to create the safe spaces for them to do it.
yeah.
But that comes with education as well, like, and that's the biggest challenge we have in West Clare is getting men into these courses. We've no problem. Women are so resilient; they're always the first to sign up for these courses. But
Yeah.
it's getting the men into the courses. It's still proven the challenge. And even at last night's talk in Milltown Malby, it was even more evident the ratio was, much higher female to male. So it's an ongoing piece of work we have to do.
It is,
You
James.
know,
And I would say if there's any listeners out there, particularly from County Clare, male listeners that have any ideas as to how to reach out, how to encourage more men to come out and join these groups and to help themselves, I welcome that. Do you know what I mean? Welcome different ideas from different people as to how to. If let's say somebody is listening to this, James, and they're thinking about maybe coming to be part of the peer groups and the stuff that you do. How would they go about that, first of all?
Well, I suppose the first thing to probably do is have a look on our website, westclarementalhealth.ie, and
Hmm.
see what's on. What's on. There's the schedules are there, the daily schedules,
Mm,
and then there's the message box where they can contact us. That would be the first thing to do. Have a look at when the peer support is on or when the walking groups are on. And then there's no appointment necessary or anything. You can just turn up when they're on and introduce yourself. But I suppose the most refreshing thing of the men that are in the groups already, there's no competition between them. There's
yeah,
no beating the chests and going bum 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 bum. Look at me and look at that. There's
yeah,
none of that.
yeah.
They're also really comfortable in where they are in life. I suppose they're comfortable with the diagnoses they
Mm,
have or don't have, but the similarities or shared life experiences, and that's where lads. There's no competition here. And that's what there's no fear of any man coming up and going, I'm going to be competing with someone, or is his depression going to be worse than mine? Or anything. It's
yeah.
not like that at all. It's just a safe place for people to come and talk about, what's going on in their life.
How refreshing, James. Like, could you imagine that, that for somebody they're already struggling and then they don't have to worry about judgments or expectations or competitions. They can just be themselves. So I know so you've got the website, then you've got the lighthouse then. So is that separate or what's that, James?
The lighthouse is the building that we use for just the peer support
Okay.
meetings. So that's basically we're here this evening now, and yeah, it's just the name of the building. But I suppose the reason they chose the lighthouse is, when you're out at sea, you're looking for that hope, and
Mm,
it's symbolic of that you have to keep hope and to see that beacon in through the darkness. So
yeah.
that's the kind of tie in there with the lighthouse, and it's, we're a seafaring community back here. So, and again, that would be a male dominated industry. So it's to give hope and to guide people in that there's always hope and never to lose the light.
Yeah.
So that's that. But that's just the name of the building where the peer support goes on. We have the cup of tea
Yeah.
and the chat.
Yeah, fair, fair. I love that. I love the connection, the significance of all of that. I love that, James. And I believe that you're planning to come to the talk on the 16th of April.
All fingers crossed. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything going well. I had due to have an operation last
Mm,
week and it was cancelled. So I'm waiting to see when the operation is going to come.
yeah.
But hopefully they are saying April, but hopefully we'll be there. If we're not there in the night, if I'm in hospital, I'll zoom in from my hospital bed and we'll have a chat.
It's the
We
least
will
you can do.
we we're all for removing the barriers. So, this day with technology, there's no excuse. If I can't be there in person, we'll be there online.
To be
But I'd hope to
fair,
be there in person.
if you're in hospital, James, I think you've got a
I'm
fair
not, I'm looking forward to you singing a song again.
Uh, you've got a fair enough excuse, Send us your literature anyway if you can't be there. So just that if people come on the night, because that venue is at the Inn at Tremolin. So if you can't be there because of the operation, send us a literature, like leaflet, stuff like that.
I will
So
do. Will
people
do.
kind of have got that information that they can get in contact. It's lovely having you here, having the chat, James, because I think it's a massive step when people can hear what you're like and how open you are and down to earth and there's no airs or graces, that
Mhm.
can be very reassuring for somebody who might be thinking of coming along to the peer support groups or the rap stuff, the different things that you do. James, you're
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Folks, I went to see James, as mentioned, in Kilrush and the setup and all of that, chatted to a few people there and it is pure inspiration what you do, James. We need more people like you out there.
We do, and we need more people to come on board, I suppose, in the association as volunteers,
Okay.
because we've a big area space, like, but we are kind of heavily concentrated in Kilrush. But
Yeah.
we need a few more men on board. We've plenty of women in our volunteer committee, but we could do with a few more men coming aboard, and the more eyes, the more opinions and fresh ideas as well. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe any of us is the expert. That's what I was saying. If that it was any men listening to this, like men in particular, that have any ideas as to maybe putting on an event or something that might get more men out there. Do you know what I mean? Like talking and do you know what I mean? To bring the
Absolutely.
ideas forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just we can't be everywhere at every minute of the day, like, but to be, we can have footprints in the communities, and we just need more. We need more boots on the ground. That's with everything. That's
Yeah.
where we have to. That's where the battle could be won if we can get out there more.
Well, sure, look, all we can do is our best, James, and fair play
That's
to
it.
you for taking the time out, to have the chat here. And look, if we don't see you at the event, best of luck for the operation and all of that.
Thanks. And look, I'll be definitely be talking to you before then
Yeah.
anyway. But you just don't know with the HSE. They cancelled it, and they said it may be April, but I haven't heard from them since. So we just. Well, I can't control it, so I won't really think about it. You know that way.
I love that. That's a
It'll
bit like
be
this serenity prayer. Accept things that are out of your control, the courage to change
absolutely.
the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. James, listen, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And
You
for the
too, Sheila.
listeners, feel free to comment. We welcome your thoughts and everything on this. So again, James, really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Sheila. All the best.
Okay.
Thank you for watching Counsellor Convos with Sheila McMahon. If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel.